This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
We'll get into Dolphins Patriots in a minute, but first, download the Prize Picks app today. Use that code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. Also, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use that code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Greg, before we get to Dolphins Patriots, Alex Van Pelt met with the media today, and he had something very interesting to say. Van Pelt told the media that he had no idea that Marcus Jones had played offense before. What was your reaction when you saw that?
Basically this, my hand on my face. Like, seriously, this is the gang that can't shoot straight. I mean, oh my God. Like, really? I mean, I don't even know where to start. I mean, Drake Maye's the head coach of this team. He's been around. He's seen Marcus Jones play offense. Never one time mentioned, especially, okay, I could see maybe in the offseason or, when they're getting ready for the season. Like, they just want to worry about, they got a rookie quarterback. They got a new scheme. They're just worried about that. But, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 games in the season when the offense, like, stunk the joint up and they're looking for any way to create explosive plays and do anything on offense. Like, Gerard doesn't say something like, hey, you may want to try Marcus Jones, reverse or run or something like that. Like, he's been pretty good. I mean, yeah, he's playing a lot on defense and he does punt returns, but we might be able to do a couple plays a game for him. You should check that out, AVP. Why don't you go watch his film from last year? And I guess it must have been a couple years ago, because I'm trying to think, because he was hurt most of last year, wasn't he, Nick?
Yeah.
So it would have been 2 years ago when he played some on offense or what have you. So I could see why AVP didn't notice it. He probably just watched the previous year's film. I mean, why go 2 years back on a lot of these guys with what's gone on with this offense and people coming in and out? So he probably just looked back at last year and it never came up. But I mean, this is something else that I just put on the head coach and just be like, what are we doing here? Seriously? Like, let's be on top of things.
Yeah, he only played 2 games last year, started 1, so, not a lot of time. You go back to his rookie season, he played in 15 games. That's when he was getting some offensive snaps. I look at it not only at AVP, but also, as you said, Greg, the rest of the staff. It's not just Mayo, but you have several coaches that were on the staff last year, and nobody brought this up. Nobody brought this to Van Pelt's attention. And I also want to say this. I think it was Zoe. I'm not sure, but I think it was Zoe on Patriots All Access that asked Mayo about utilizing Marcus Jones on offense. This was either last week's episode or 2 weeks ago. And Mayo's response was, well, he's a defensive player. And so I just find it interesting that a week or two ago, Mayo's asked about Marcus Jones playing offense, and he brushes it aside saying, well, he's a cornerback, he's a defender and a punt returner. And then a week or two later, he's out there getting offensive snaps, even if it were only, 2 snaps. 2 snaps is 2 more than he had the entire year. So, is this a situation again of Mayo, I don't know, throwing stuff up against the wall, not having a clear plan as to how to utilize players in certain spots? It's just all strange. Van Pelt also spoke about the interception from Drake Maye last week against L.A. There's been a lot of back and forth about whose fault this was. Was it Maye's? Was it Pop's? Well, Van Pelt said today, Greg, that Maye made the right read on the pick. So certainly sounds like the offensive coordinator is putting that on Pop Douglas more than he is the rookie quarterback.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I also, he did say something about, like, he would, if he looked, he might have had a chance to catch the ball.
Yeah.
He didn't say it was a good throw. I still think the throw would have been problematic at the end of it. Like, Drake was sort of got off balance. His feet were really narrow. He was throwing off of like 1 foot, and he kind of sprayed the ball. But the only thing I'll add to that is, look, if Pop was wrong, then Hunter Henry and Kayshon Boutte were wrong too, because they all had their head down well after Maye released the ball. So to me, that's that's a coaching point. I think at this point I would put it on coaching that they, weren't quite dialed in and ready for that situation. And, hopefully they correct it in practice this week.
I'm just so annoyed with, and we'll get into the rookies in a minute, what Van Pelt had to say about the rookies. But I really am annoyed, frustrated by the fact that wide receivers seemingly, have so many mistakes on the field over the last few years at that position. And we talked about Troy Brown and, maybe Troy Brown wasn't a great coach. They move on from Brown. He's hiding in an undisclosed area at Gillette Stadium during the week. I don't even know what the hell he's doing. He's getting a paycheck from the Crafts. I know that. But you move on from Troy. Then you bring Hughes in. Doesn't seem like Hughes is doing a good job. Like, can we get a wide receivers coach in the building that knows his ass from his elbow? Can we try to do that once in a decade?
Yeah, I know. And you sort of look back to, Mac Jones's rookie year. And, of course, I was getting into it with some people on Twitter about this because God forbid you mentioned Mac Jones was highly efficient at times during his rookie year, especially in the first half of the season. But just, sort of the job that coaching staff did, especially offensively. I think it was Mick Lombardi was the wide receivers coach at the time. And really the weapons aren't all that different, or I wouldn't say that the 2020 weapons were all that much better. I mean, yeah, they spent money, but, like I've said before, Kendrick Bourne basically needed his hand held through Saturday to get him through Sunday. We all know about Jonnu Smith's issues here. Nelson Aguilar was part of that. I think, I would like, just in my experience covering the league, Nick, the guys that I thought did the best job were sort of well-traveled, older wide receivers coaches. Like, there was a guy, I think his name was Jerry Sullivan. There's guys I covered. They all seemed to be the same. They were sort of like in their late 60s, but these guys were hard asses. They were taskmasters. I mean, the Packers did a great job of developing. I think it was Jimmy Robinson in Green Bay was the wide receivers coach. And the Packers did a great job of developing wide receivers in that system. And I think it starts with the coach. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's got to be one of the priorities this offseason.
Here's a name for you. Chad O'Shea. I don't know if he's going to be, somewhere else, go somewhere else. Maybe if Brian Flores gets a head coaching gig, he goes with Flores. But he is the wide receivers coach and pass game coordinator for the Cleveland Browns right now. And Cleveland's not doing well last time I checked. So Stefanski, I would say, is on the hot seat. He could easily be popped. If Stefanski is popped, Chad O'Shea is without a job. He worked in Cleveland for the last few years, so he obviously has worked with Van Pelt. He was with Van Pelt when Van Pelt was in Cleveland. Obviously, he has some experience in New England. He was the wide receivers coach here from 2009 to 2018. So I just wonder if O'Shea could possibly be a fit, knowing the Cleveland offense, working in the Cleveland passing game. A lot of those, things that they do in Cleveland is what Van Pelt wants to do. It would seem like a pretty good marriage. We'll see if it comes together. All right, rookies, offensive rookies. Van Pelt said that all offensive rookies will be good players. He said, quote, they have to roll. They're not rookies anymore. When you look at this rookie class, Greg, I mean, you got obviously Jalen Polk, everybody's talking about, but Javon Baker, he made a brief appearance as a kick returner last week before Mayo benched him. Jaheim Bell, there was a lot of talk about Jaheim Bell getting better at practice leading into the game last weekend. Of course, he got an opportunity. He dropped the football, probably cost the Patriots at least 3 points. So when you just look at this overall, these offensive rookies, is there anything that tells us we should expect differently from them over the final 6 or 7 games here?
Not really. I mean, but I will say, because look, I think Polk's going to continue to get action the way Van Pelt talked today, even though to me he looked utterly lost in the last game and sort of needs a reset. I don't think Wallace is ever going to play. I don't think he's going to, unless there's an injury, unless he supplants DeMontre Jacobs, which, I don't really see happening, but who knows? Maybe he does. Layden Robinson, I don't see him playing. I mean, with Cole Strange coming back at some point, I don't really see him playing. They even talked about taking a look at Cole Strange at, not only left guard and center, but also right guard as he comes back. Javon Baker, I think this is a redshirt year for him. He's been getting on the field, but I don't really think – I guess there's a chance. Marcellus Dial has done a good job on special teams, but they don't need him in the secondary. Joe Milton, we know we're not going to see him. And Jaheim Bell, I think he's going to continue to get reps. He could do better. But what I was going to say was I don't – especially about the offensive rookies, I don't disagree with Van Pelt. I know everyone wants instant gratification and they expect X, Y, and Z out of rookies. And we've talked about it. I think every year people forget. They're brainwashed. They forget that rookies, most of them take some time to develop into at least their second season. But every year they want to play fantasy football with the draft. And no, we're going to draft this guy. We're going to plug him in and he's going to be great. And but it rarely ever happens that way. We all know about Drake Maye. I think Jalen Polk is certainly an NFL receiver. He's not showing it this year. They have to address the problem in the offseason. I fully expect next year that we're going to talk about the May and Polk connection at some point. Caden Wallace, in my opinion, we don't have a whole lot of data on him with his injury issues as a rookie, but to me, he's at least a backup swing tackle type, and that's fine. And that's a third-round pick. That's okay. Layden Robinson, to me, looks like a starting guard. He's had his issues this year as a rookie, but I think he's a starter. Javon Baker, we'll see. Again, not my favorite draft pick. Milton, I think, will be an NFL quarterback at some point with development. And Jaheim Bell, I think he's got a chance to be one of those move tight ends down the line. But he is a 7th-round pick, so you're expecting that to pay off down the line. So I don't disagree with Alex Van Pelt. That's why I'm not just ripping Elliott Wolf for the draft. I don't expect instant gratification, and I see traits that these guys can play in this league, and that's what they need. After, we just looked at the 2022 draft and how many guys are left here. Yeah. I feel much better about the chances of this draft class being here and being contributors in year 3 than what we got out of 2022.
22 was brutal. The Jalen Polk stuff it's just fascinating to me because I watched him in Washington. I was there at camp for at least 6 or 7 of the camp practices. In the preseason, he made a couple of plays. The player that I saw at camp was a guy who had great hands, made plays on the ball every once in a while down the field, seemed to have some decent chemistry, especially with Drake. And then all of a sudden, it's just like his focus is just completely off. When you look at the issues with him, it's drops, it's penalties, it's these things that, it seems like his focus isn't there. And I didn't read a single word about Jalen Polk's focus being a problem at Washington. And when Jalen Polk was drafted, everybody agreed that where he was drafted was pretty much where he should have gone, somewhere in the early to mid 2nd round. It wasn't like, oh my God, what are they doing? It wasn't like a N'Keal Harry, oh, well, this guy's game might not translate in the NFL. It wasn't a Tyquan Thornton pick where it was like, that guy probably should have been drafted 2 rounds later. What the hell are they doing? And it just seems like a focus thing with him. I don't know what's going on, Greg, with Jalen Polk. I don't know if there's a personal thing going on.
Yep.
I don't know if, he just lost his confidence early in the year. And I have no clue what's up, but I can tell you, the guy that people are watching, and this is what makes it difficult, because I understand people cannot go to a lot of training camp practices, right? They have their jobs, they have their kids, they have their lives. You might be able to squeeze in 1 or 2. And so you go off of what people are talking about and writing about. And so it's really difficult. I understand it's really difficult for people to watch Jalen Polk, what he's done this regular season, where he's looked like a bust through 11 weeks. it's really difficult for those people to believe in what we're saying. But I'm telling you, I watched this guy at Washington. He was a completely different receiver. And I understand it's not going to be the same thing in the NFL, but the hands and focus were not the issues with Jalen Polk. The questions were, could he consistently separate, right? Was one of the questions. Was he athletic enough and all of that stuff? And if you watched him at camp, you didn't have any inclination that this kind of season would happen with him. I thought, hey, he might get 40, 50 catches and 500 yards this year. And, here we are. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if you've heard anything, but to me, just something is up with him. And I don't know if it's just my confidence is shot because I got off to a bad start, or if there's something more at play here, Greg, or it might be a coaching issue, but I kind of lean towards the first two things.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. There certainly could be something going on with him personally that always could be the case. You just never know. I mean, to me, I think it's a combination of him not fitting the scheme as well as he did in Washington, and he's not getting good enough coaching.
All right. Yeah, I want to clarify. I'm not saying it's anything personal. I'm saying when a player loses focus, there's a reason for it. Sometimes it could be personal. Sometimes it's just coaching. Sometimes, like Greg said, he might not be the greatest fit with what they're trying to do right now. It's also obvious. I would say one more thing about Polk before we move on. He's playing a lot in the 12 personnel. If you look at his snaps, he's playing a lot with the two tight ends, which tells me that the coaches feel like he's one of their best blocking wide receivers. Because when you go 12 personnel, you're going to run the football. So I also wonder, it might be time, Greg. I said this on my personal podcast, the Nick Cattles Show. I'll get that plug in there Monday, Wednesday, Friday on YouTube. But I have been surprised that they haven't schemed a couple of easy ones for him. Just to try to get him going. Like on Sunday, I don't know about you, but on Sunday, if it's 12 personnel or it's 11 personnel, whatever they're doing, whenever he's out there, I don't know, man. Get him the football once or twice early and try to get him to feel good, even if it's like a bubble screen or a tunnel screen to try to get him going. I am surprised that they haven't, and I know people might be like, oh, that's force feeding or kind of, giving him a little pat on the head. I don't care. He's your second round pick.
I think they've done that the last couple of weeks. Well, certainly the touchdown that they gave him, that was basically like,
yes,
here, Jalen, here you go. Feel good.
They did that, yes, in that game. But I'd still like to see a couple of passes during a football game that between the 20s to try to get him going a little bit. I don't know.
Yep.
Just two more quick things, Greg, before we get to the game. So Demarcus Covington, we know he's coming off of one of the worst games that he's had as a DC. He was named in that annual hiring cycle list for head coaches. Do you think Covington's year as DC has impacted in a negative way his chance to get a head coaching job in the next year or so?
Well, I don't think it's helped. I do. I've always been high on Demarcus. I thought he did excellent work at defensive line. Now, Albert Breer did bring up something interesting. I forget where he said it. But I hadn't really realized it, and I thought about it, and I was like, Bert's right. It's not often that you see a guy jump from defensive line coach to being defensive coordinator and play caller. Normally, those guys have a little bit more experience in the back end, or at least they go from defensive line to linebackers to secondary, or something along those lines, which sort of makes you question, like, does he understand, like, some of the choices that he's making and how that affects the secondary and the ability to cover, and is he going to have a good grasp of marrying pressure and coverage? Certainly interesting questions to talk about. And by the way, related to that, I was watching JT O'Sullivan broke down Matthew Stafford against the Patriots on his YouTube channel, not on his Patreon, so it's out there for anybody to go watch. But especially the Cooper Cup touchdown. Sorry, I don't know why I'm dying.
I'm getting choked up about Matthew Stafford's performance.
Yeah. He basically was like, he quote unquote said, like, this is LOL defense. Like, he's like, they had 3 over 2 and how they did it. Like, no one passed off Cup. He was wide. I mean, it's not, you won't get an easier touchdown. He was just like, oh my God, this is epically bad defense. And just go watch the rest of it. Cause that wasn't the only time he was sort of laughing at the Patriots. And he didn't even put the one like later in the game. I think it was their last drive where Cooper Kupp was in the slot and they brought Taki on a blitz from left inside linebacker and expected Jelani Tavai to cover Cooper Kupp in the slot from right inside linebacker. I mean, he was wide open. He didn't even break that play down. But anyways, I think DeMarcus is a good coach and is going to be a good coach. A lot of those lists have to do with agents and relationships and stuff like that. He's nowhere near ready to be a head coach in this league. He might get interviews, probably affiliated with the Rooney Rule and things like that. I mean, that's just sort of the way things go. But, I do think if he does the right things and has longevity and proves as a defensive coordinator, which I think he will, because I do think he's really good. In time, he'll be a serious candidate for being a defensive coordinator. But right now, based on what we've seen this year, hell no.
Well, we know that coaches pay attention to texts because that's how Van Pelt found out Marcus Jones wanted to play offense and could play offense. So maybe you should try to text. I don't know if you have Covington's number, but try to text him some adjustments, Greg, that you've seen on film. Maybe he'll take it seriously.
I mean, if AVP didn't know about Marcus Jones, then, who knows what Demarcus Covington hasn't been told.
I will say I tweeted out at Nick C Radio during the game on Sunday. I am sick and tired of the busted coverages inside the red zone. There's been 4 or 5 of those, like guys not knowing who to pass, who off to. I think Marcus Jones himself has had 2 busted coverages in the red. It's like you get in the red zone. It's supposed to help the passing defense. Things get condensed. Too many busted coverages in the red zone. Too many, Greg. All right, you know what? I was going to ask you about TC McCartney, but let's hold off. Let's get to your prize picks this week.
Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. As of right now, they did not have any Patriots or Dolphins players up on there, but I will do something at some point and putting on Twitter. But I did want to tell you, after Thursday night football, so we're taping this Thursday afternoon, after tonight's game, they're going to post a free square for Thanksgiving. So yum. Love the free squares. That's how I was, winning a decent amount of money early on in the season. Tyreek Hill only needs to receive a half a receiving yard for the projection to hit. If you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you win real cash. So that's going to be for the Dolphins Packers Thanksgiving night game. So make sure you get over there. Like I said, Tyreek's going to catch a pass. All you have to do is get one more correct. You can do it. We can do it. And you can win cash. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
Run your game indeed. All right, TC McCartney. He was listed in that story that Tom Pelissero does. I think it's Pelissero. And McCartney was listed as NFL coaches to watch in future years. Maybe you haven't heard anything or much about TC McCartney, but I'm going to ask you, have you heard anything about TC and his reputation and maybe what's been going on this year?
No.
All right, then.
Yeah. I mean, nobody heard of TC McCartney, but this is the kind of stuff that you get with a rookie quarterback. If a rookie quarterback pops, especially early, people are going to look at the OC, probably pass on Van Pelt. And then they're going to look at the quarterback's coach and be like, who's this TC McCartney? He's also, I forget how it works. He's the He's grandson of the former Colorado head coach. So it's in his blood. His dad was a quarterback at CU. So certainly an interesting candidate. But again, early for a lot of these guys. I mean, they barely unpacked their bags here yet. Can we hold the phone on them being head coaching candidates?
All right. Not much.
And they are also 3-8.
They are. It's true. It's true. All right, let's get to this 3-8 team against the Dolphins this weekend. Let's start with the Dolphins offense versus the Patriots defense. Greg, your thoughts on Miami, what they try to do, and what the Patriots have to do.
Yeah, I'm worried about this one, Nick.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, look, we saw the issues that the Patriots had last week with the Rams, who, similar scheme. We all know Mike McDaniel comes from Sean McVay. I would say Mike McDaniel is Sean McVay's on steroids as far as how much scheme and motion, the pace that they play, and also just the way his team's built. I mean, if the Patriots had that many issues with let's call it a more simplified version of what McDaniel does with no speed out there. Now you're going up against the Dolphins that's souped up with even more speed I would equate Kyron Williams with their running backs. I mean, even though A-Chain to me he's a lot bigger. All those guys, they're big, they're fast. They get them involved in the passing game. You got Tyreek Hill, you got Waddle. They're even getting something out of Jonnu Smith. Even though I think that's a little bit overrated. I saw, they ended up this final score against the Raiders looked good, but it was a close game the entire game. And it didn't really get busted open until Jonnu Smith was left wide open.
Oh man,
that was touchdown.
That was one of the most delicious busted coverages I've ever seen. Nobody was within 30 yards of Jonnu. He's literally just running down the field.
I'm still surprised that he caught the pass. I mean, I got to go back and look at it, see if his techniques changed, but I'm sure it didn't. Because I always equated him to he was like one of those guys who catches fish at Pike's Place Market in Seattle. Every time he caught a ball, he'd stop his feet. He'd be like, it was like he was trying to catch a fish. That's the way it looked. Just not a natural ball catcher. This scheme is cooking now. Over the last 4 games, they are first in offensive EPA. They are first in pass EPA, 15th in run. They've turned the ball over 3 times over those 4 games. Interesting though, I was interested in this. Big plays. You equate the Dolphins with big plays, even though I do think a lot of teams just play them back. A lot of teams, they see a lot of zone, a lot of cover 2.
Yeah.
And, Tua basically throws I would say he's an expert at throwing over the middle about 10 yards or less, 7 to 10 yards. That's sort of his bread basket. And also checking it down to the flats. He does that all the time. Miami has 53 big plays over the last 4 games. New England has 51. Miami has 9 20 plus pass plays, 7 for New England. The Dolphins, I think it's because of how fast they play and how fast he gets rid of the ball. But over the last 4 games, they are second in the least amount of offensive pressure allowed, 21.2%. I don't love their offensive line, but it's effective with this group. He schemes around it, which is possible, people, like we were talking about early on in the season with the Patriots line struggles. The big key to me is, and I don't have a whole lot of confidence that the Patriots can do this, especially after what we saw against the Rams. You have to get Tua off his first read. That's what he wants to do. You have to find a way to do it. It goes through. I mean, these guys are in the division. You should know them. You should have studied them in the offseason. You should have a really good plan. Certainly better than the Rams, who you only see once every 4 years. So I could somewhat understand that. But you got to take his first read away. And that's when you can get pressure on him. That's when he starts turning the ball over and taking sacks. So that's a big key in this game.
I'm not sure if anybody will understand my analogy or my comparison, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's how I roll, folks. I will explain it. So hang with me here for a second. So Tua, he's been able to extend plays from time to time, right? He was able to extend plays a couple of weeks ago against the Rams defense, and it worked out for him. He did it once or twice against Vegas in that game. But he's like a Julius Randle of the NBA, where like you have some guys where like they'll take threes and they'll make their first couple threes, but you're not worried about it. Like you want them to keep taking threes because inevitably water will find its level and they'll end up bricking the next 5 threes, which opens the door for you. I feel the same way about Tua when it comes to extending plays and holding on to the football. He might be able to make a play or two extending, but the more he does that or tries to do that, the better it is for your defense. Because when Tua holds on to the ball and he's kind of running around, you just feel a mistake coming. That's when errors hit. So I agree with you, Greg. You don't want Tua to be able to get rid of the football as quickly as he does. I mean, Miami is the fastest team in the NFL when it comes to time to throw, 2.52 seconds. I mean, as soon as it hits his hands, he wants it out. The more that you keep him in the pocket, the more that you have him guessing and looking at his second read, even his third read, the much better you're going to be. Achan's a problem. Achan's a problem on the ground. Achan's a problem in the passing game. Greg mentioned motion, and it's not just motion with the wide receivers. McDaniel will motion everybody. I mean, the running backs will motion. Jonnu Smith will motion. Jonnu will motion at the snap. He had a touchdown last weekend because he motioned at the snap and got open. You're going to see a lot of that late motion. And as we saw last weekend, Patriots defense stunk against motion with the Rams. So they've got to be able to turn this thing over rather quickly and get it going. All right, before we get to the Patriots offense versus Dolphins defense, Greg, tell the fine people about Game Time.
Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals and great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Love the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Like I told you last podcast, they have some really good deals going on for, I think it's Sunday's game against the T-Wolves, which should be a great matchup and a lot of fun to watch. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS to take $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Pats offense, Dolphins defense, Drake Maye coming off his great game against LA, his best game in the NFL. How does Drake Maye and company stack up against this Miami D?
Not bad if they can get protection and if they can run a little bit. That's going to be a little bit of an issue. The Dolphins defense over the last 4 games, 21st in total defensive EPA, 26th against the pass, 12th against the run. I think that they don't get a whole lot of pressure. Miami, their Dolphins D is 30 in pressure rate over the last 4 games. The Patriots are 18th. Of course, probably almost all of that was against the Bears, so that skews that a little bit. I think there will be opportunities for them. I mean, I do like a lot of the players on the Dolphins. Javon Holland at safety is really good. Poyer, he's a vet. He's older. He's a little slower. I don't like them at the line.
Vegas went at Poyer last week a couple times. They moved Bowers, and I'm sure we'll get into this with the tight ends, but they moved Bowers a couple of times to pull Poyer over to him, and Bowers just ate his lunch. And look, Brock Bowers was also one of the best players in the draft last year. It's not like Pharaoh Brown, with all due respect, is chewing up Poyer, but I do think Poyer's lost a step over the last year or two.
Yeah, and I do think that they're like a little bit aggressive, and you do see that with a guy like Poyer at his age. Like, we all slow down a little bit, and we gotta jump the gun a little bit. And I thought there were some opportunities over the head of the safeties that Vegas couldn't really get to at times. But I think that I'm worried about. So I think they'll have the ability to make plays down the field, And, Jalen Ramsey is still, really good. I like Kuhu, the slot safety, slot cornerback. I know we might get Storm Duck again at cornerback. All name team, but this defensive line.
What's better? What's the better part of that name, the Storm or the Duck?
I think Duck.
I was gonna go with Storm, which means that it really is one of the greatest names of all time. Anyway,
yeah, it's awesome. But their defensive line of, Ogba, he's all right, but Seiler inside, Calais Campbell, man.
Yep.
That guy just never stops. He's still one of the best players in the league. That's a guy, the Patriots should have signed him in the offseason. I don't even know how much he signed for. It couldn't have been that much. And he might not have come to New England, but that's the type of guy that they need going forward to sort of solidify the defensive line and the interior defensive line. And Chop Robinson, the rookie, has done a really good job. They don't get a whole lot of pressure, but he's one of the guys. Over the last 4 games, he's averaging 4.5 pressures a game. Zach Seiler, who's criminally underrated, a great player, is averaging 3 per game. Calais Campbell is at 1.5. So, Chop Robinson is a guy who's coming into his own. They're going to have to account for him on third down. He lines up on both sides of the line against the tackles. So, it's hard to get a beat on what he's going to do, but, Jordan Brooks, also the linebacker, brings a lot of pressure on blitzes. So to me, the battle for the Patriots offense, whether they're going to be able to do anything and Drake Maye can sort of get in a shootout with the Dolphins it's going to depend on, can they block things up, or are they going to have issues with that?
Calais Campbell is 3rd in the entire NFL in defensive tackle pass rush win rate. He's like 45 years old. Seiler is 14th in defensive tackle pass rush win rate. So you got 2 guys on the inside that have shown that they can get to the quarterback consistently. The interior of the Patriots offensive line best have a good day on Sunday. Chop Robinson, when you look at that statistic, Greg, that analytic is 10th in edge pass rush win rate, which is 1 spot below Jared Verse, the guy we talked about last week for the Rams. We sung his praises. Chop was a beast against Vegas. I mean, he was winning his rush. It felt like every other snap of the football when it came to dropbacks. So Chop is picking up the NFL now. One of the questions that I have, though, I wanted to ask you, if you are, was it Anthony Weaver? Is that the DC name?
Yeah.
If you're
Former
Anthony
Baltimore
Weaver
guy.
So when you look back, Greg, at week 5, what's interesting is Miami doesn't blitz a lot. They're 19th in blitz rate. They blitz about a quarter of the time. Last week, they were 22nd in the league in blitz rate. They were under 17% against Minshew and Vegas. But when you look back at when the Dolphins played the Patriots week 5, they had the 10th highest blitz rate in the league that week at over 32%. So my question to you is, this is a team that doesn't like to blitz. They didn't blitz hardly at all last week against Minshew, but now you've got Maye instead of Brissett. If you're Weaver, what's your plan? Are you bringing the heat to Drake Maye? Are you blitzing him? Or are you doing what you do, which is not blitz a ton, hope that your defensive line gets home and play a lot of zone coverage?
Look, I think you could blitz Jacoby more because you knew where he was going to be, and he wasn't really going to beat you with his legs, even though he's going to try and fail at that, especially after week 1. I think they better have a really good plan against Maye's legs. You would think that they might play a little bit more man coverage in this game, but if you do that, you have to have a spy on Maye. I mean, if I were the Dolphins, what I would do is, because I'm not afraid of the Patriots in any way, shape, or form in terms of them, winning down the field. I'm manning everybody up and I'm putting a spy on Maye all the time. And one thing I wanted to mention about Robinson, as you were talking about, it reminded me, that dude has closing speed like that's rare. As soon as he gets on the edge, when he's closing, he all of a sudden goes, 5 feet in a fraction of a second. He's all of a sudden whoo. So that'll be interesting to watch, to see how Maye deals with that, because that's kind of one of those things as a young quarterback that you're just like, you don't realize how good these guys are, and sometimes you're falling back on what you did at UNC and in college. Like, if you try to evade Chop Robinson, it could be a big loss.
All right, we'll get to our picks in a minute, but first I'll tell you about BSJ, $50 for the year. Bedard Giardi do a great job with the Patriots, of course, and everybody else that works for Greg. They do tremendous work. You also want to download the Prize Picks app right now as you listen to this or watch us. Use the code CLNS. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. And if you want to go to a game anytime soon, check out Game Time. You can download that Game Time app, create an account, use that same code CLNS, and they will take $20 off of your first purchase. All right, this week's pick. I am 5-6 against the spread. Greg is 3-6-2 against the spread. I am 5-6 straight up. Greg is 6-5 straight up. So here's what this week's matchup looks like. The Dolphins are favored by 7.5 down in Miami, so they're minus 7.5. And Greg, the over/under number is 46. Give us your pick, big guy.
So, in a vacuum, I would probably take the Dolphins and the points, especially because it's Miami and it's New England just for some reason cannot play there. And by the way, that place, it must be a South Florida thing, but that place in Tampa are two of the stadiums where, I don't know, weird shit just happens. Like it just does. Like It's just, I don't know what's the way it's situated, or like, in relation to the sun or whatever. But every time I go down there, like, I feel like off kilter at the game. And plus they have the worst press box in the league location. And I will actually be at Sunday's game. So not looking forward to that, but it is what it is. I do think that there could be a possible look ahead factor for the Dolphins in this. They have at Green Bay on Thanksgiving night, so they have a short week coming up. And this is one of those teams that sort of feels themselves if they have a little bit of success. And I do think that Drake Maye is going to have a pretty good game against the Dolphins. I think he'll do all right. But at the end of the day, if the Patriots couldn't do better against the Rams last week, I'm not picking them this week. I think they're going to have even more trouble with this speed. And I think the Patriots at this point in time are just, their secondary's pretty fast, but overall, they're a pretty slow defense. They're a pretty slow team. And I think Miami's going to make them look really, really slow in this game. So I'm going to go Dolphins 30, Patriots 20.
All right. I am going to go Miami 27, New England 23. I think Miami will score 27-30. I agree with you, Greg. I do think there are going to be opportunities for Drake Maye on Sunday. If you watch the Vegas game, and I know you did, I did, you watched that Vegas game, and there were some things with that Vegas offense the Patriots do, and had some success against that Miami defense. The tight ends I brought up, Brock Bowers, I could see the Patriots moving Austin Hooper around, Hunter Henry around a little bit, and trying to get those guys matched up with some of their linebackers and Poyer, who I mentioned earlier. I think the tight ends could have some success against this defense. And here's what I would say. Alex Van Pelt needs to run the football, because when you go back to their Week 5 matchup, Patriots averaged almost 8 yards a carry. But Van Pelt only called 18 runs for Stevenson and Gibson. And I remember after that game, I lost my mind and I was screaming and ranting and raving, trying to figure out why you only called 18 runs when you were averaging almost 8 yards a carry. Run the football early and often, keep it away from Miami, force Tua to take his time in the pocket. And I think you have a chance to keep this close and keep it within the 7.5. So I'll go Miami 27, New England 20. I take the 7.5, and I would go over that 46.5 as well. All right, that'll do it. We'll see what happens on Sunday. And by the way, did you notice one thing, everybody out there? that Greg Bedard doesn't go on a lot of road trips, but he just so happened to be able to squeeze a road trip to Miami in late November. This guy, he's got it figured out. He wouldn't send me to, London. I couldn't go to any of these fancy, but my man was ready. When he saw that, schedule, he's got friends down in Miami. Don't forget. Bedard's was a Miami fan. He's got friends down there. He saw, a trip down to Miami late November, right before Thanksgiving. Looks like a fantastic time to maybe go on that trip.
Miami Dolphins #1. They're in the air. They're on the ground. They're all so no, but I will say the only reason I'm going on this trip is #1, it was cheap. #2, it's one I love these trips where. So I'm flying down very late on Saturday night, get up, go to the game. I'm on a flight back after the game, 9:30 takeoff. So it's only one night. I really like that. I hate the getting up at like 5 a.m. on Monday mornings after a Sunday game. That's just brutal. But these trips have turned in really good, really easy. I'll be there less than 24 hours, baby.
I'm going to do the Will Ferrell Anchorman gif. I don't believe you. So there you have it. Everybody enjoy the weekend of football. Be well. We'll talk to you early next week to react to this game.